Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. Hello. We're going to get started here. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Future of Manufacturing and the Road to Decarbonization event. Thank you for being here. I'm Alison Snyder. I'm one of the managing editors at Axios, and I'm joined by our first guest, Katie McGinty, who is the Chief Sustainability Officer at Johnson Controls, which specializes in building technology, including energy-efficient heating, cooling, energy retrofits, and sustainable design. She's also a former federal and state environmental policy official, including in the very best state of Pennsylvania, which we are both from. And go Eagles! Did actually, sorry, really quick. Did they win yesterday?
Yes, they did.
Okay,
Yes, they did.
I should know that.
Fly, Eagles, fly.
So this afternoon, we're going to be exploring the intersection of manufacturing and the progress toward clean energy transitions across a variety of businesses. So let's get started here. And I want to start with Johnson Controls. Can you talk a little bit about what are some of the most misunderstood or sort of underrepresented aspects of where buildings fall in terms of being the top emitters in the world?
No, totally. Well, it's good to see everybody. Happy Davos. So buildings, yeah, I think when we all think about climate and climate action, we go immediately to solar, wind, electric vehicles, and thank goodness for all the progress we've seen in that space. But maybe not enough known fact, buildings represent actually 40% of global greenhouse gas emissions. And so in terms of zero decarbonizing the climate unless we decarbonize those buildings. You know, the cool stuff happens inside buildings. We go in, we run our businesses, we live our lives, we have our sporting activities, whatever it is. Nobody thinks too much about the bricks and mortar. But there is good news associated with the bad news that is the 40% figure. Okay. And that is that we do have the technology today to totally turn that around, and it's a trifecta of efficiency, electrification, and digitalization. That's what we can put to work for not only net zero, but net energy positive buildings.
So what's making the biggest dent?
You know, I think you need every single piece of that equation. And let me just start with the efficiency piece. So it's always been the least charismatic, energy or environmental tool. Having spent a little bit of my life in the political world, it's like, how do you invite people to the ribbon cutting for efficiency? The absence. However, one, the technology is making the space much more cool, like heat pumps on the electrification piece. But also, when we're all struggling with how do we make climate action stick and stay against economic cycles and political cycles, efficiency's got to be number one. Why? Because it dramatically reduces emissions while dropping cash to the bottom line. You're cutting costs as well. So you asked me for the biggest one. I want to come back to heat pumps, but if I had to pick one, the real revolution coming to buildings is in data and digital. Okay. And I'm not just saying that because AI is the thing of Davos and I want buildings to be in there. But we know in COVID, for example, the height of the lockdowns. So 80% reduction in occupancy in commercial buildings, but we only saw a 20% reduction in energy consumption because buildings are basically pretty dumb bricks of mortar, totally analog, and man, big on-off switch. You turn them off, bad stuff happens. The pipes freeze and a lot of bad stuff happens. The reverse is, as we put data to work, and a little advertisement, so in Johnson Controls, our end-to-end digital platform's called Open Blue, harnessing AI, one building, just to give one example, 1 million data points a minute that we're processing. And what does it do? It understands electricity prices, it understands outside temperature, it understands indoor air quality, and boom, enables you to have that building become like a battery, dramatically cutting emissions, costs, and even being able to sell energy back to the grid.
So if that's the case, why are so few companies doing it? Why are so few people doing it?
I will say, I think honestly, our biggest challenge, maybe this is back to the, not so charismatic, it's about mind share. You know, the breaking through, when we at Johnson Controls show up in a building, they're like, oh, you're the Johnson Controls, you're the HVAC people. There's the elevator, you push B for basement, not for boardroom. And so it's when we can sit down, though, in the C-suite and take the conversation to a strategic level and have a conversation that says, what's top of mind for you? And what CEOs will tell you right now, it is capital preservation, it is hardening themselves against a potential trade war, reliability, uptime, runtime of their assets. And they are like pencils down, heads down against that. If you can get 2 seconds, though, to say, hey, if that's the case, if you lean into decarbonization, you're solving for all of those outcomes. And just one example is from our own facilities. And this is a little bit of, this is just amongst us, right? So one of our big factories is in Norman, Oklahoma. It's the second biggest energy consumer in our fleet. And as we've dramatically reduced our Scope 1 and 2 emissions, it's like, okay, the next big horizon is massively to upgrade some of our biggest workhorse factories. We got in there, and 2 things were true. One, it was a must-run factory, but it had 60-year-old equipment in it, and that was the risk to operations because it was breaking down. But second, to get at the cash-flowing, carbon-reducing efficiency measures, we wound up staring at $30 million of deferred maintenance. But here's the trick in terms of then, so why doesn't a CEO run away from that? They don't want, who has $30 million around? But the energy efficiency gains are so great, we achieved that upgrade with the efficiency paying the entire capital costs, cutting our emissions 43%, dropping $960,000 a year in reduced operating costs for that facility. And for a must-run facility, it now has state-of-the-art, most advanced operating equipment. So the story is real, and the technology delivers. It's just capturing C-suite time to elevate this from a compliance discussion, or it's the environment, it's climate. Well, that's the feel-good department. Go talk to our social responsibility people, to a strategic competitive advantage conversation. When we get a chance, we have the examples, I think, to drive home the opportunity.
So electrification is a big part of this, right? You mentioned it. I mean, like, how effective can that be if the power for that that's driving that is coming from coal and natural gas? Like, I mean, the new U.S. administration wants that. How effective can it be?
Well, that is obviously for electrification of building systems, heating space, hot water, as well as electrification of transportation. The ultimate source of those electrons is critically important. Yeah, I do think you have some pendulum swinging right now. I do think, however, in the face of that, you do have some fundamental economics where the relative cost points and the least cost of energy has some staying power in driving the generating choice towards cleaner and cleaner sources. I also think, by the way, a little detour, but on the AI energy equation, you know, the inventiveness and the don't ask for permission, I'll apologize after kind of attitude of the colos and the hyperscalers bringing new energy, clean energy resources into the mix is going to change what that order is in the queue in our electrical system. But here's the reason why heat pumps and electrification of building systems is so critical. 2 reasons. One is in conventional heating systems or cooling, you can maybe get, high water mark, 85% efficient, so you're still throwing away 15% of the energy it takes in order to achieve the heating or cooling. With heat pumps, and I know you're a chemical engineer, so this is going to test your real knowledge of physics. But you actually are achieving many multiples of workable energy on the back end than you put in on the front end, and it doesn't violate the rules of physics. The trick is that typically, instead of conventional cooling would pull the heat out of this room and just dissipate it, probably also destroying a lot of water to evaporate that heat away, the heat pump grabs that thermal energy and puts it back to work. So you get another turn of the dial in heating another space, or in process heat in manufacturing, or in heating water. And so some of our projects, we literally achieve 10, 11 times the workable energy on the back end as you need to drip in on the front end.
I want to go just sort of big picture. And some of these large-scale energy infrastructure transitions, it requires a lot of public-private partnerships. You obviously have a lot of experience in that. And so I'm wondering, how worried are you about the sort of continued viability of those and then over the next 4 years in the U.S., obviously?
Well, first, I just want to validate that that public-private partnership is absolutely vital. Mm-hmm. So, we're at kind of the best of times, worst of times in climate action right now. We've never seen government step up as decidedly in terms of mobilizing resources and incentives. At the same time, we've got some geopolitical headwinds as well. But when you look at the numbers of what is really required in order to achieve that energy transition, and you've seen numbers like $4 trillion a year of financing gap, that's got to involve mobilizing private sector dollars together with public sector dollars. I guess I'll share in the U.S. context anyway with the Inflation Reduction Act. I do have a sense of hope about that. Okay. And it comes from just enough of the tick of the clock from the passage of the IRA, going from words on a page to steel in the ground. Mm-hmm. And there's enough of that steel in the ground now in every kind of major infrastructure project, chip manufacturing projects, et cetera, that while it was only Democrats who voted for the legislation, a lot of that job opportunity and economic growth has happened in red states as well. And I think there was not too long ago 18 Republican members of Congress who wrote to say, hey, go hunting elsewhere for reducing costs and leave the IRA alone.
It is interesting, though, a lot of the things that I think here in Davos that have been on the agenda for a long time, including ESG, there's sort of been a political backlash to them, right? In the case of sustainability, there was sort of consumer-driven pressure, and it sort of carried it through even the first Trump presidency. Do you think it'll last a second one?
I do think that spotlighting. I don't think anything is a foregone conclusion for sure. But two things also I think are true. One, I do believe that there is a growing number of those C-suites I'm referring to who do see, and I get a little cheeky with this, that ESG is JGB. It's just good business. If you're thinking about it right, if you've put your tiger team on it, just like people were doing with AI, where they're putting their best and brightest. What's in it for me in this climate change thing? How do I make this work for my company? And what they're saying is this, reduce operating costs, increase the reliability of my operations, help me attract and retain the best and the brightest out there. So that's the optimistic piece that I do think we will continue to lean into forward momentum. There's a not so optimistic piece, but it solves for the same direction, I think, and that is that Mother Nature is shaking her fist pretty darn hard. And you're out of business if you can't get insurance, and there are increasing number of places around the United States and the world you can't get insurance. And I think that is real as rain, to people who are putting balance sheets together and trying to finance their businesses. There hopefully will increasingly be inherent business-driven momentum because it's just a physical reality that this has to be dealt with.
We're almost out of time, but we end here with one fun thing. And I made the mistake last time of assuming that it was not someone's first Davos. So is this your first Davos?
It is not my second. And then after a hiatus of about 25 years when I was here the first time.
Oh, wow. When you were...
Okay, it might have been 30.
So what's your big piece of advice for how to make it through the week? Especially, you were here in a very different capacity 25 years ago, right?
I was indeed. Yes, I was in the Clinton White House and was here for some... then it was... what was it? I was one of the global leaders for tomorrow. I'm hoping I'm not a global leader for yesterday at this point. I think Mother Nature's smiling on us. Otherwise, my only advice would have been those crampon things that they give you. Wear them.
Thank you so much for doing this. We really appreciate it. Thank you again. And so everybody stay right here. Up next is going to be a word from our sponsor. So thank you. And Nick Johnson.
Thanks, Alison.
Sorry.
Thanks, everybody.